The story opens with a frail boy named Takuto Era, confined to the sterile walls of a hospital room. His escape from reality is a video game, an empire-building dark fantasy simulator he plays endlessly to pass the time. Exhaustion slowly overtakes him, and he drifts into sleep. But when he awakens, the world around him is no longer the white ceilings and beeping monitors of the hospital. Instead, he finds himself lying on soft grass beneath towering trees in an unfamiliar forest. For someone who has spent years shut away in bed, the clean air and vivid sounds of nature are overwhelming. Just as he's trying to make sense of this miracle, a figure approaches. To his astonishment, it's Atu, the very character he loved most in the game. Takuto can hardly believe what his eyes are showing him. He mutters that this is Eternal Nations, the strategy game that had consumed his bedridden days. The game revolved around controlling civilizations in a world of darkness and ruin, and Atu was his most cherished companion. She greets him with a soft, unwavering loyalty, addressing him as king. Confused, Takuto wonders if he is expected to roleplay, but Atu reassures him. She reminds him that he had once accomplished what no other player could, clearing the nightmare difficulty with the hardest faction, the feared civilization of Minogra, known as the Nation of Ruin. His cunning strategies had even placed him at the very top of the global leaderboards. To Atu, he is not just a player but a legendary ruler, and she remembers every word he had spoken to her in that digital world. Takuto reflects quietly, admitting that perhaps the reason he always chose her was because he longed for strength like hers. Now, standing before her in the flesh, he can't suppress his emotions. He asks if she was the one who summoned him into this strange place, but Atu herself seems puzzled. She too woke up here suddenly, and though it resembles Eternal Nations, she insists it isn't heaven. Instead, she calls it a miracle, that fate had reunited them. She proposes that they start anew, building an empire together, just the two of them. Though still dazed, Takuto decides there's no sense resisting the situation. If this is truly the world of Eternal Nations, then he wants to recreate the joyous moments he once had. He accepts Atu's suggestion, agreeing that they will create their own kingdom side by side. Stepping into her role as vassal, Atu kneels and pledges her loyalty. Takuto finds the gesture almost embarrassing, but the sincerity in her eyes makes his heart stir. He declares that she will be his one and only confidant. While others may brand Minogra as the most evil empire, he knows the truth: it thrives not through conquest but through internal order. They would keep to themselves, ruling with restraint. To begin, Takuto uses his powers to summon a scout, a strange insect-like creature with long legs, conjured through emergency production. The grotesque appearance makes them both recoil, but it serves its purpose. He explains that while Minogra is infamous for ruin and evil, in reality, it is a civilization built on careful governance. That means they must remain hidden in the early stages to survive. Atu nods, realizing that this strategy matches the rules of the game: stealth before power. The summoned creature, obedient to their command, scuttles away to explore, and Takuto notes with fascination that he can partially share its vision. Looking at their resources, Takuto calculates. They have only 200 mana points in total, and summoning the scout has already consumed half. Establishing their first base will cost another 20. He laments that he wanted to summon a warrior unit instead, but their reserves are too limited. Atu feels guilty. Under normal circumstances, she would have defended him herself, but at the moment she is weak, only level 3. As a hero unit, she will grow stronger in time, but right now, a single powerful enemy could easily crush them. Takuto admits that the challenge feels brutal. Still, Atu encourages him not to despair, promising that together they will endure. Meanwhile, through the scout's eyes, Takuto begins to grasp the lay of the land. The forest stretches endlessly, dense with trees but curiously devoid of wildlife. Atu finds it unsettling but also a blessing: it means they can hide easily. Yet the lack of food worries them both. Takuto admits that survival will be difficult if resources don't appear soon. Atu apologizes for not being more useful, but he gently tells her that just having her beside him is more than enough. Her cheeks flush at his words, touched by kindness she never experienced in the game. Suddenly, the scout stumbles upon a settlement of dark elves nearby. Takuto is startled by the sight. The creatures are gathering in significant numbers, not far from where he and Atu are standing. The realization strikes him: they are truly inside the world of Eternal Nations. He knows from his player knowledge that dark elves are usually neutral, leaning slightly toward evil. That is a small relief. Still, he fears that if this is someone else's starting zone, conflict is inevitable. Bordering another empire this early would be disastrous. For now, discretion is key. Atu reassures him, saying that in the worst case, they can always retreat. Takuto agrees. They are a kingdom that values peace, and gathering intelligence is their best move. But before they can decide further, dark elves suddenly approach their location. The scene shifts to another perspective, the lives of those very elves. A band of them, led by Captain Jia, trek through the cursed forest in search of food. Exhaustion plagues them, and their people grow weaker by the day. Some urge Jia to abandon this barren land, but he reminds them they have no choice. Their clan was driven out of its ancestral home, forced to wander. This forest, though cursed, is their only refuge. He acknowledges the hardships, the children especially are close to breaking, but insists that somewhere amidst these oppressive trees, sustenance must exist. One of the elves, Emily, recalls ancient texts warning that an evil force was sealed within these lands, suppressing life itself. Jia dismisses it as superstition. Though the forest is unsettling, he believes the spirits of their ancestors are guiding them through this trial. Turning back would mean death. Their path soon crosses with Takuto. The moment Jia lays eyes on him, dread fills his heart. Shadows coil around the boy, his aura radiating an otherworldly menace. Jia instantly believes that before him stands a being of unimaginable danger. One misstep could doom his entire people. Terrified, he chooses humility over defiance. Kneeling, he introduces himself as Captain Jia of the Mazalram clan, apologizing for intruding. Atu, watching, feels satisfied that they at least understand the gravity of stepping into Minogra's domain. She demands to know why they dared enter. Jia explains their plight. Once dwellers of the central lands of Idrea, they were violently expelled and forced to flee. With nowhere left to go, they ended up in this forsaken forest. Takuto, moved, asks them directly if they are starving. The question stuns Jia, but he admits the truth. The persecution left them destitute, and they haven't eaten in days. Their children suffer the most. Takuto responds by summoning food, apples glowing red in his hands. The elves gape in disbelief, they have never seen such fruit. Cautious at first, Jia hesitates, worried that eating might appear offensive. Yet when his companions taste the fruit eagerly, delight spreading across their faces, he realizes it is safe. Takuto even produces pears, urging them to eat. Atu, though irritated by his generosity, orders Jia to accept the gift. Overcome, the captain bows low, asking humbly if he may bring these fruits to the starving children left behind. Without hesitation, Takuto grants him more food. Atu scolds him for wasting precious mana, but the elves can barely contain their gratitude. As they leave, Jia reflects bitterly on the fate of his race. Once cast out by the light, dark elves have endured centuries of suffering in exile. Yet no one has ever shown them mercy, until now. To them, Takuto's kindness feels like a miracle. They bow deeply, thanking him with reverence. When asked who he is, Takuto avoids the question, simply saying that the food is theirs now. Back at the dark elf settlement, hope flickers to life. Children rush to devour the fruit, tears of relief on their faces. Some ask Jia how he procured such bounty, but he deflects, saying it was luck, not daring to reveal the terrifying truth. That night, as the village rests, Jia keeps watch. The elder, Molter, approaches, intrigued by the miraculous fruit. In his long life, he has never seen anything like it. Suspicious, he presses Jia for the truth. Reluctantly, Jia confesses, they encountered a being of legend in the cursed woods, the so-called King of Ruin. Molter stiffens at the name. Old texts warn that when the world grows too full, the King of Ruin will appear, wiping everything away to reset existence itself. Whether myth or fact, the tales are grim. He asks if the entity revealed its name, but Jia replies that it did not. Yet its presence alone was enough to inspire terror. Molter then asks how the being communicated, and Jia explains that Atu spoke for him, relaying the words of the king. The elder shakes his head. Whatever it was, it does not bode well. Already, he senses strange disturbances in the forest. Molter presses further. What did the elves give in exchange for this miracle? Jia admits sheepishly that the being asked for nothing. The elder is shocked. In this world, nothing of evil grants gifts freely. But Jia insists that perhaps the King of Ruin showed mercy. Molter calls it dangerous folly, furious at the thought of giving such a title, Great One, to a creature shrouded in darkness. Jia, however, refuses to yield. Takuto saved their children from starvation. That, to him, is greatness. Their argument flares, but Molter eventually concedes, saying only that in the future he will lead negotiations with the entity. Meanwhile, Takuto and Atu bicker. She scolds him for squandering mana so recklessly on strangers. Mana, she warns, is their lifeline. Without it, their fledgling empire will collapse. Takuto admits he simply pitted the elves. He promises that from now on, he he will heed her words. She blushes at his sincerity, softening instantly. Apologizing for her harshness, she assures him that she will follow any command he gives. Takuto, however, reflects inwardly. He realizes he could barely speak to the dark elves himself, letting Atu handle the conversation. Tears sting his eyes. Once again, he is reminded of the loneliness of his past life, a boy with no friends, no one to talk to. The scene begins with Takuto receiving a report from his insect scout. The creature informs him that the elves are heading back toward his domain. At first, Takuto is surprised by their return, but then he realizes it makes perfect sense. The last time they visited, he had provided them with far more food than they could carry away. Naturally, they would come back to claim the rest. Still, Takuto can't shake the feeling that conflicts with such foreign races are bound to happen sooner or later. He quietly hopes the elves will just take their supplies and leave without further trouble. Although he could assert his dominance and forbid them from stepping foot in the forest again, that would mean engaging directly with outsiders. Takuto dislikes the idea of speaking with anyone other than Atu, the one person he feels comfortable around. Sensing his discomfort, Atu offers a practical solution. She proposes to take over all negotiations herself, allowing Takuto to preserve the image of a mighty and composed ruler. The thought relieves him, though he hesitantly asks if she is truly fine with carrying such responsibility. Atu assures him with confidence. She is more than willing to act as his voice. Not long after, the elves finally arrive. Molter, the leader of the Dark Elf tribe, enters with Gia at his side. They kneel respectfully before Takuto, and Molter introduces himself with deep gratitude. He thanks Takuto for feeding his starving people and requests to know the name of their benefactor so that they can properly honor him. Atu, after confirming with Takuto, announces with pride that they are standing before none other than the king of ruin Takuto era. Gia's eyes widen in shock at the revelation, for legends had spoken of such a figure. Molter, however, chooses to remain composed and reiterates his people's appreciation. Takuto is relieved that the exchange is going smoothly, but Atu immediately presses the elves to take their food and leave at once. Both Molter and Gia are unsettled by her bluntness. They had assumed that someone bearing the title of King of Ruin would demand heavy compensation for such generosity. Hesitant, they ask if they are really permitted to leave without offering anything in return. Atu coldly responds that they have nothing of value to give anyway. Molter feels uneasy about leaving a debt unsettled. He quietly fears the potential consequences of offending such a powerful figure, perhaps even the loss of their souls. But he keeps his dread to himself. Takuto notices the sudden tension and pulls Atu aside for a private discussion. She is frustrated with Molter's stubbornness and bluntly suggests eliminating the elves entirely, certain that leaving them alive will one day cause problems. But Takuto disagrees. His true goal is to establish mutually beneficial relations, not needless bloodshed. He realizes Molter is only troubled because accepting aid without any repayment makes him feel vulnerable. To ease that burden, Takuto proposes they request a form of fair compensation instead. Atu finds his reasoning sound and returns to relay the new terms. Molter's shoulders relax once he hears this compromise, though Atu still struggles to decide what exact payment should be demanded. She turns to Takuto for direction. Calmly, he suggests asking for knowledge about the lands beyond the forest. Following his lead, Atu tells Molter that in exchange for Takuto's support, he must share information about the outside world. Molter quickly agrees, but she sternly reminds him that once he fulfills this request, he and his tribe must leave immediately. That order, however, would leave the Dark Elves homeless once more. Desperate, Molter pleads for permission to stay in the forest. But Atu swiftly rejects his plea and threatens that if he values his life, he must never reveal Takuto's existence to anyone. Gia tries to protest, warning that the Dark Elves will perish if banished, but Molter silences him, unwilling to risk angering their savior. As they begin to leave, Takuto hesitates, guilt stirring within him. He never intended to bring suffering to the elves. In a sudden moment of inspiration, he calls after them and makes an unexpected proposal, asking if they would instead be willing to join his nation. The Dark Elves freeze in shock, unable to process his words. Even Atu is caught off guard, pulling Takuto aside once again. She demands to know why he would say such a thing. Takuto explains that he envisions a refugee system where the elves could find a home within his kingdom. After hearing his reasoning, Atu begins to see the logic behind it and reluctantly admits that it might be a wise decision. Takuto further explains that Dark Elves, by nature, are not inherently tied to good or evil. Their alignment would not conflict with his own kingdom's darker tendencies. Moreover, in the game world, the population of Managra had largely been made up of homunculi. He questions whether Atu truly wishes to build a nation where only those artificial beings exist. Seeing his point, Atu addresses Molter and Gia once again, this time offering them a choice. If they swear loyalty to Managra, they will receive Takuto's protection. Molter seeks clarification, and Atu lays it out plainly. Joining Managra will brand the Dark Elves as an evil race in the eyes of the world. Still, the decision is entirely theirs. Atu emphasizes that while their fate may be sealed as evil, it will at least be a future filled with possibilities rather than certain destruction. Days later, Takuto and Atu travel to the elves' camp to hear their decision. Atu is impatient with how long it has taken, but Takuto understands. Accepting the label of evil is no small matter. Finally, Molter stands before his people and declares Takuto their new king. The elves kneel as one, parting the way for him to approach the throne they have prepared. Some tremble in fear at the sight of him, while others seem filled with awe. Yet those who draw too close collapse instantly, overwhelmed by the sheer pressure of Takuto's dark aura. Gia quickly warns the others not to look directly at him, fearing that even a misplaced gaze might be considered disrespect. Takuto, however, is unfazed. He takes his seat upon the throne and formally announces that all gathered are henceforth citizens of Managra. With that proclamation, the Dark Elves become his people. Gia had expected some grand spectacle, especially after Atu warned that they would fall into evil. But instead, what follows is even more profound. A surge of rage ignites within Gia and the others, flooding their hearts with memories of persecution and hatred. For the first time, those scars are given purpose. Alongside the pain comes relief, even hope. They rejoice at finally finding a ruler who would fight for them. Days pass in the fledgling kingdom. Yet Takuto finds himself increasingly frustrated as he studies the map gifted by Molter. Their position could not be worse. To the north lies the holy kingdom of Qualia, devoted to the god Arlos, and the elven realm of Elna, protectors of nature. Both nations are strongly aligned with the forces of good. If either were to discover Managra's existence, Takuto and Atu would be hopelessly crushed. Worse still, the cursed forest offers no valuable resources, leaving their kingdom terribly disadvantaged. But at least they now have the Dark Elves, who may provide the strength needed to endure. One day, Atu notices elves approaching and brightens at their arrival. They come bearing news. Molter and Gia return, this time accompanied by Emily, a young woman renowned for her intelligence and deep knowledge of foreign cultures. Gia insists that she will be an invaluable asset for Takuto. Though pleased, Takuto can't help but notice how nervous they remain in his presence. He has Atu reassure them that excessive formality is unnecessary. From this point, Atu announces the kingdom's new leadership structure. Molter will oversee Managra's internal affairs, managing the nation with the aid of his magic. Gia is named Supreme Military Commander, granted full authority over their forces. Though honored, Gia swears to crush all enemies mercilessly. Takuto is unsettled by such intensity and quickly clarifies that he seeks peace, instructing them to avoid unnecessary aggression. Atu then dismisses everyone to rest before construction of shelters begins. Molter and Gia bicker briefly, each trying to assert their own importance, but Atu ignores their argument and focuses on their enthusiasm. When she asks Takuto if they should begin construction immediately, he agrees, though with one condition: they must avoid harming the forest. He suggests gathering materials carefully and practicing reforestation as they build. Atu approves, and Molter confirms it should be possible if they harvest larger trees selectively. Takuto is relieved but shocked when the elves don't understand the concept of reforestation. He explains the importance of replacing what is taken, but their lack of knowledge surprises him. It suggests this world is far less advanced than expected. Even military magic and the 6 great elements appear unfamiliar to them. Emily adds that such techniques are virtually unknown outside their borders. Atu, unwilling to lose face, explains that reforestation is a special method Takuto himself created, one that accelerates the growth of new trees using elemental magic. The elves are awestruck, and Emily eagerly praises Takuto's wisdom. She then mentions planting grape seeds, which have already begun to sprout. Both Takuto and Atu freeze, realizing they hadn't even thought of doing such a simple thing. In this world, fruits like grapes and apples do not naturally exist. Takuto had created them using his emergency production skill. Testing a theory, he attempts to summon a coin. To his amazement, it works flawlessly. The implications are staggering. If he possesses enough mana, he can generate not just food, but metals, fuel, even gunpowder. The realization dawns on him: his abilities are immeasurably powerful, perhaps limitless.